Okay, so now that you have a good idea of what my Module 5 project is going to be from the introduction video, we're going to move on to the history of Skype and then tie it into how IRC and ICQ paved the way for programs such as Skype to exist. And I'm going to note a bunch of similarities between the programs, including earlier similarities from IRC and ICQ, plus current similarities as well. So right now I am on Skype's Wikipedia page, which can be found at en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Skype. And Skype was first released in August of 2003. This is the Windows client version history, so this applies to Windows only. And the first Skype version beta came out. And then in this table we can see what the publish date was for new functions that were added and which versions numbers coincide with that. Going down to the bottom here, October of 2012 was Skype's latest release, which is Release 6.0. In Release 6.0, they issued a new design, included 6 new language packs, and integration with Microsoft's accounts, including Messenger, Hotmail, and Outlook. Of course, them including Microsoft accounts makes sense since Microsoft purchased Skype in 2011. Now, moving on to explore a little bit different of a history of Skype, reviewing an image found on geekosystem.com, and this image is Skype from conception to acquisition. It's an infographic. In 2003, Skype was founded by Nicholas Zenstrom and Janice Fries. What's interesting to note about Zenstrom and Fries is that these two guys also created peer-to-peer file sharing network called Kazaa. Now, Kazaa has since been shut down due to litigation and copyright issues, but I do want to note really quickly that the two people who created Skype also happened to previously create a file sharing network previous to developing Skype. And the reason why this is worth noting is because IRC and ICQ both had file sharing peer-to-peer capabilities. So it is interesting to note that two people who developed a peer-to-peer network also developed what turned into a real-time chat client with video conferencing and video or screen sharing capabilities. It just kind of shows how things have progressed since IRC in 1988, moving on to ICQ in 1996, and then also integrating peer-to-peer networks and then eventually Skype into the equation. Moving on to 2005, eBay purchases Skype, which is sort of a weird acquisition considering that eBay, as most people know, is an auction website. So it was a little out there that they purchased Skype. And then also in 2005, Skype Out is banned in South China. In 2006, connection fees for all Skype Out calls were introduced. In 2007, eBay realized it had overvalued Skype's worth. In 2008, there was conflict between the founders and eBay, which destabilized Skype. But also in 2008, they brought in Josh Silverman, who became the CEO and brought stability back to Skype. In 2009, eBay and their investor groups settled litigation in court regarding a software license. In 2010, Skype filed with the SEC to raise $100 million in IPO. And then in 2011, Skype acquires Quick, and then Microsoft purchased them for $8.51 billion. And that's what brings us to where we are today, the program that most of us know and some of us use. Moving on to Skype as it is today. This is the latest version of Skype that I have installed. And as you can see, this is how a person would go ahead and use the program. Up here you have the menu, the Skype menu, which you can set your online status, change your profile, restrict privacy, buy Skype credits, change passwords, sign out and close. Under the contact menus, this is where you would add users, import contacts, create new groups, sort your list, show your Outlook contacts, and go to advanced contact settings. The call menu is where you would go to set up your call settings. Your view menu is where you would choose what you want to view in the Skype window. You also have a tool menu with apps. You can also change languages, your accessibility options, share Skype with a friend, Skype on Wi-Fi, and other options. Or you can go to the help screen to get help, Or if you think that Skype's down, you can check Skype's heartbeat status, set up the call quality guide so you can see how to get the best call quality, check for updates, provide Skype with feedback, view Skype's privacy policy, or read more about Skype. So to start with similarities, let's start with IRC, and right now I am on efnet.org. EFNet is the first and oldest version of the IRC network. EFNet is free to use, and IRC is quite different than ICQ or what Skype is today. However, it was one of the first programs that allowed users to chat in real time. It is also one of the first programs that allowed people to connect with people that they didn't know, also get questions answered online via text. And IRC, of course, stands for Internet Relay Chat. And basically what you can do on Skype is chat. And if you're versed in, if you're versed in using EFNet or any of the IRC networks, you can create things such as IRC bots. And IRC bots are what were used to file share programs and other media between users. So let's start with this one. I went to efnet.org, and things with IRC really don't look a lot different than they looked back in the 90s per se. Everything's pretty much set up very similar. It's very simple to use. It's very simple to log in. So if you go to EFNet, it automatically pre-fills a nickname and it automatically selects a channel. Now you can change your nickname to anything you want. There's no registration required. And you can also, if you know what IRC channel you want to join, you would just change web chat to what other channel you want to create or join. So let's go ahead and log in. It'll bring up a screen and you just confirm to join. And then it shows up here that I joined. This is my username. This is the showing that I had joined the channel #webchat. Over here it shows other users. I have nobody on this list, so they are all strangers. If I knew somebody who was using IRC, I could go ahead and join the channel that they were in and find them by username. I've now switched over to the status box at the top. This gives you all the status information. It shows you that 200 IRC operators are online, that there are 59 clients and 1 server, and the highest connection count, and the message of the day. And down here it says chat.efnet.org lives on the server, and that's the server name. There's also an option now to integrate chat.efnet.org with your website or channel, and then you have the end of command. Now, to set myself as invisible, what I would do is I would type plus the letter I. Now, it's not going to let me do it in here, but since I don't want to start talking to people or interacting with people, I'm just going to do everything over here. And if I move my screencast down, you'll see that it says user mode change +1 or +I. Can't use this command in this window. If I did it on the other screen, it would set me to invisible. But one good thing to know is that invisible doesn't necessarily mean that it shows you're offline, but what it does do on IRC is that it makes it harder for other users to find you. And that's basically how to use IRC. You choose which network you want to join, you choose which channel you want to join, you choose what you want your display name to be, and you go ahead and connect and you're in. And you can either find other people you know that are using the network, or you can connect with people that are from around the world that you don't know. So you have your screen where your text is going to display. You have your box with your users in it. And then down here at the bottom, you have the box where you type your message and you hit enter to send it. Now, switching over to ICQ, I would have loved to be able to have the original version of ICQ to compare it against, but unfortunately, due to it being such an old program released in 1996, even the late 90s programs, it'd be hard to make it compatible with current technology today. But it is worth looking at today's current ICQ because it's not that different from what it used to be, with a few exceptions. Those exceptions being that it has a nicer look and design to it, works a little bit better. I'm on broadband as opposed to being on dial-up, so it's quicker. And you can integrate social media accounts, such as connecting with Facebook, Google Talk, or you can connect with Yahoo. The menu down here and the online status, showing whether or not you're online, used to be up here at the top. And in today's version, you also have the phone option, just like Skype, to make calls. And then you can also go over here and change your colors and change your themes, so you can customize it exactly how you want it to look. So if I go to menu, this looks very similar to Skype, and most of these options were available in the earlier versions of ICQ, minus the conferencing capabilities aren't the same, and the social media, of course, wasn't present back then since those accounts didn't exist. But all of these options, such as settings, contact lists, searching for accounts, signing in with a different account, adding user, deleting user, exiting, and then over here to status, where you can customize your status. You can be in working mode, smoking mode, drinking coffee, in love, studying, online, ready to chat, away, invisible, do not disturb, and offline. And in this box up here, you can also set your status and hit the send button to let everybody know what you're doing. So it's very simple, and it is very similar to the older versions of the program. All of the options that were in earlier versions, for the most part, are still available to users that download and use the program today. So I don't use ICQ today. I just did a fresh reinstall for this video. I use other programs. But if I had contacts in this box here, much like there are contacts over here in IRC, I would just double click on a person's name, and that would bring up a box to go ahead and text in and have a conversation in. The notable difference is that in IRC it stays in the same window. You can use commands to private message people in IRC, however. So I can go ahead and search for contacts, or like I said, if I had contacts in here to start a conversation with them in real time, I could just double click on them and it would bring up a text box for me to start having a conversation back and forth in real time with that person. I can also choose to connect with a random person if I chose to do so. And in older versions of ICQ, you could connect randomly, or you could type in random ICQ numbers and have the system connect you randomly to it. So going back over to Skype, as you can see, Skype is set up very similarly to the current version of ICQ, which is still very similar to the older version of ICQ in the late 90s. There are notable differences, of course, between IRC and ICQ and Skype. Most notably, IRC is very simple. There's not a lot of design. There's not a lot of fancy buttons. It's a simple program, and it's made to work simply, and it's made to text. And if you know how to share files, then you can share files. It's made for conferencing and to learn text conferencing and to have conversations with people. It's not as jazzy as even ICQ was back in the late 90s, and definitely not how they are today and how Skype is today. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to wrap up this portion of the video and continue with similarities a little bit over in the next section, and then we're going to move on to how and why people use Skype and ICQ and IRC to bring it together some more.